Welcome to the Plant-Centered and Thriving podcast. I'm your host, Becky Kitchens. Welcome to the Plant-Centered and Thriving podcast. I am so excited for our guest today. Her name is Becky, and she also happens to be my mother. So welcome to the show, Becky.
Thank you, Ashley. How are you doing?
Good. So Becky comes from the heart of the Midwest, and I know she's going to talk about this a little bit more, but she has two plant-based daughters. One is me, and she went plant-based because she was, quote, prodded, pun intended, way back when, which she's going to talk more about. So we'll look forward to hearing her story of how she got into plant-based eating. But before we get into that, Becky, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a mother of three. I had two daughters and a son. I have 5 grandchildren, and that keeps us busy when we're up in our hometown. Right now, we're away visiting in Florida, but that seems to keep us busy. I have been a stay-at-home mom. I was throughout all my life. I always had a balanced meal on the table, which would include meat of all kinds, salads, beans, potatoes, just, your average all-American meal that moms would make, casseroles, burgers, whatever. So, But other than that, I've been married to Ashley's dad for 42 years almost. I did work a little bit after the kids got out of the house with our businesses, but other than that, I'm a stay-at-home wife now.
Yeah. And some of you know, she was talking about, we grew up in the Midwest, but part of my childhood was on a Angus Cattle Farm. So
Right.
as you can imagine, listening to this, there was a lot of meat on our plates, growing up. So it's kind of we joke about it a lot, especially now as we're more, as a family, more plant-based, how much meat we did have, and two,
Right.
just how fun it was growing up on a farm. It was a really great experience.
Yeah, it was. And we had the cattle out in the fields, and we had meat in the freezer, and
We always had meat in the freezer.
always had meat in the freezer. Oh yeah. And sometimes we hated to eat some of that meat because they were our friends too.
Yeah, we won't talk about that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So Becky, for people listening, definitely, you grew up in the Midwest, you grew up in Indiana, you
Right.
were on an Angus cattle farm for a period of time when I was young, but tell us a little bit about how you got into plant-based eating.
I guess you could say for Ashley's birthday several years ago, she came to her dad and I, and she said, "You know what I'd like this year for my birthday?" And we're like, okay, what? And you said, for us, would you go plant-based for me? Would you do it for you guys too, like for 3 months? And it was like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this. But we did. In fact, we did it longer than 3 months, and we did it actually 4, and that was totally full out plant-based. That was not putting anything else in our mouth that was not plant-based. So we did that for 4 months. We went and had all of our labs checked. Of course, we'd had our labs checked before we started our plant-based journey. And my cholesterol, I can't speak for Greg, but mine was at 204 when I went in before we started. And then when I had it checked 4 months later, it was at 158. So it had gone down, 46 points.
Yes.
And we started feeling good. I felt like my skin, my face glowed. Hence Angela Liddon's cookbook, Oh, She Glows. I think that is just perfect for that, right? And my skin, just the way I felt, I had more energy. So that's how we got started. And then, of course, when we would see you and your hubby, and we would be together, and it was always plant-based, and, oh, Mom, let's make this and that. And then my youngest daughter became plant-based. And well, anyway, so.
Well, and with that too, one thing that I feel like you all did such a marvelous job of is being accommodating. And I'm curious, what was helpful for you, for people who are listening and maybe they have children who are going plant-based, or they themselves are trying to go plant-based and, navigating these like family experiences. What do you think was helpful for you with your two daughters going plant-based and growing up in the Midwest and kind of this being a very unfamiliar way of eating? What was helpful for you to kind of approach that situation?
Well, for one thing, your dad being on board. So, we were both able to do it together, and you guys fixed some pretty good meals. I mean, they were delicious. I guess I don't know how else to say it, is that you made it very easy transitioning for us. And Dad and I are pretty, oh, we're easy to get along with. So to us, it's no big deal. I mean, neither one of us were like, we have to have our meat and potatoes every day. I know there are people that are like that. And I don't know how others deal with that, but it's so good.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great point too for people who are transitioning or trying to kind of navigate their own journey and maybe eating with other people. It sounds like was really helpful for you all was for those people who are transitioning, it's like to bring over really delicious meals and help kind of make the food or maybe guide you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know between you and your sister, I mean, there were a lot of phone calls, texts, Mom, just substitute. I mean, I know when we first got started, I know you had mentioned this earlier, but I had gone to 4 different grocery stores in one afternoon looking for one ingredient. And that was not fun. I mean, and it's like, really, my little small town, we don't have, I mean, 4 grocery stores is great, but they just don't offer sometimes that. So, that's when you make your trips to, the grocery that's an hour away, that's maybe like Whole Foods or, just different grocery stores.
Hmm.
But and then you guys are really good at too. Well, Mom, just substitute this. You don't need to put that in there. You can just, what about using this? Or even the other day, someone on your blog or what was talking about canned beans, and it's like, oh yeah, I've got black beans in the cupboard. Mom, you don't have to make those. Just get a
Yep.
can out, rinse them real good, throw them in.
Yes,
Right.
100%. Yeah.
Right.
And that's a great tip for people who are in the Midwest or are in just a smaller town in general, where there's not a whole lot of variety when it comes to grocery stores or even like the
Right.
ingredients they provide, is
Right.
really try and hack the system or hack the recipe in a way of like find ways to not have to go to every single grocery store or drive an hour or two. I know some people drive 2, 3 hours to a more like whole food like grocery store.
Right. Right. And I know too, another thing I did is I look at my recipes first. And it's like, I don't have to spend hours making this crazy good meal would have weird ingredients that I've never heard of. And I can find other things that are much simpler. For me, that's just how I tried to start accommodating my groceries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And I don't want to not highlight the fact that you got your labs done before you went plant-based.
Yes.
And afterwards, your cholesterol went down pretty significantly because I
Yeah.
know that your doctor was just kind of starting to talk to you like, hey, it's, a little elevated. We're just going to keep an eye on it.
Right.
And here it went down. I can't remember, you said like 50, almost 50 points.
Right. 46.
Yeah,
It went
46
from
points
204 to 158. Yeah.
in a matter of 3 to 4 months.
Hmm.
And I remember you talking about your skin and being like, is this something that happens? Your skin was glowing. It was like you said, the dead of winter. So,
Right.
that doesn't really happen in the Midwest in the dead of winter.
No,
Your
it
skin doesn't
doesn't.
typically glow. It's usually dried out. So I think that's a really good point.
Right. But a lot of that is just eating fresh vegetables too, cooking with fresh vegetables, the peppers, the different colors, just the carrots. I really think that that's something that your body absorbs and it radiates.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned kind of a struggle there of navigating plant-based recipes. Sometimes they call for really obscure ingredients and you were finding
Mhm.
yourself going to multiple grocery stores trying to figure out what to buy. And it sounds like you figured out a way to really only go to one grocery store or figure out,
Right.
what you can substitute so that it's not this like a long endeavor to find ingredients for the food that you're making.
Right. That's
Yeah.
correct.
So it's been about 5 years now since I came to you and asked
Yes.
you to go plant-based. And for the
Right.
most part, I mean, because I know you, for the most part, you're still plant-based, and that's
Hmm.
a big part of your diet, your way of living. How do you feel like things are going now, with kind of what you've learned over the past several years and maybe even just from childhood?
Well, oh, you bring up childhood. That's interesting. When I was a baby, I would not drink cow's milk. My mom would put it in a bottle and give it to me, and I wouldn't drink it. I would just like very taste it and then I would throw it. And so my mom took me to the pediatrician at the time and said, I don't know what's going on. Is this something to be concerned about? She will not drink her milk. And it was cow's milk. And he said, you know what, let her go. She will get her nutrients in other ways. And the funny thing is, I've never liked cow's milk. But that's just me. And it just leaves this goo thing in in fact, I can't even stand the smell of cow's milk. I know that's terrible. I
Yeah.
know it makes me kind of like, I don't even want to think about it, but it's funny that how that just turned me off. Um, the journey now, we go back and forth from, warm to cold. So we do eat fish. Not a lot, but we will tend to eat more fish when we're down here, down south, more in the warmer climate. I don't ever buy meat or, anything like that, like any kind of meat into the house or anything. That would just be if we would go out. Once we're back home in the Midwest, I'll just be cooking. We'll eat totally plant-based. And that's really hard because we live in an area that's not, real, what's the word?
In the town that you live in, navigating the grocery stores and finding ingredients can be a little challenging. So what do you kind of end up doing to get some of those maybe obscure ingredients that you can't find necessarily in your hometown?
Well, either that, I mean, I'll go to a grocery store that's an hour or two away, or I order online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then that way it's just delivered right to the house.
Yeah, that is one great thing about a lot of different platforms online is you can order some of these obscure ingredients or ingredients that you just don't use
Sure.
that often or can't find in your hometown
Right.
delivered right to your doorstep. And I know you kind of make going to the grocery store, whether it's an hour, sometimes 2 hours away. I know that you kind of make a trip out of it and you make it fun. And sometimes you go with friends and
I do. Right. We'll just both fill up our car.
yeah, yeah.
Right. I mean, you might as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
know you don't do it that often, but just enough to have some of those ingredients on hand.
Sure. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
some ingredients I found since I've been down in Florida, and I'm going to take those back up, north with me. Maybe those obscure things will go back and forth. I'm not really sure. But anyway, I've even ordered a paste that I had to get from a restaurant in New York City.
Oh,
I
wow.
know, crazy, right? But just an
Yeah.
ingredient that, makes the dish just pop. And so, you just have to be really creative in how to find product.
Mhm. Yeah, yep. Be
So,
creative, kind of extend yourself that compassion, that grace. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay if, the recipe you're making doesn't have every single ingredient or if it has a different ingredient. Google is your best friend for like
right,
figuring out what you can do to
exactly.
substitute things. Yep.
Right, exactly. And I want to say too that three of our grandbabies are plant-based. I think Danny, the oldest, had a little bit of trouble maybe transitioning. Not much. I mean, she's great. I mean, when she goes to the school every day, her lunches are like so colorful and everything. Then there's the second one. She would eat anything that wasn't plant-based. I mean, it's just so interesting.
Yeah, it is. And we're gonna have Catherine on because she, like Becky is saying, her first daughter transitioned as the family
Right.
transitioned to plant-based. The second daughter was born into a plant-based family. And so
Hmm.
there's definitely been a difference between the two of them. But also at the same time, it's been pretty neat to see how they've both just taken to eating plant-based and eating
Right.
sometimes vegetables for breakfast is like nothing for them.
No,
So
it's not, right?
we're going to have her on to talk more about that because I know that a lot of parents have questions. Well, it's like, how do I get my kids to eat more of this or to be plant-based or to transition to plant-based? So I think that'll provide a lot of valuable information for the listeners.
I think so too. Oh, and I will tell you, we had some friends down from Indiana, and a couple meals I fixed were plant-based. The husband did not know. And well, he raved about both of them. In fact, the one dish I made, he asked me to make it again. So, and had no idea. So I just think I'm thinking, and there are neighbors at home. I'm thinking, oh, great, I can have them over and we can eat that. And,
Yeah.
they already know they love it.
Absolutely. And I think that's a
Yeah.
good point too. Sometimes when you don't put labels on things and you just present the food to somebody, it's like it's nothing. There's no really second thought to eating it. It sounds like that's what happened
Right.
with the friends who visited you.
Yes. Right. Right. We
Yeah.
just didn't say anything. His wife knew, but he didn't know. And so, yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. Wonderful. I love that. Love it.
I did too.
All right. Well, Becky, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your words of wisdom. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks, Ashley.
Until next time, keep thriving.